Welcome to r/JustNoHOA, where people tell stories about their crazy homeowner associations. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. I lived in a neighborhood with a park in the center located directly behind my back fence. The entire neighborhood was managed by the same HOA company, but the neighborhood was officially set up as two different HOA communities. Even though it was on the other side of my fence, the park was designated as part of the community I was not in. On multiple occasions, the irrigation system in the park broke and completely flooded my backyard. 3 or 4 times over a span of a few months, I woke up to literally 1.5 feet of water. Over time, my brick fire pit literally sank into the ground, an entire layer of brick. Water came into my kitchen on 2 of the occasions, and every time my home's foundation looked weaker and weaker after cleanup. I called to complain to the HOA each time. The flooding almost always happened on a weekend, and it would not be until Monday that they came out, leaving my home flooded for a minimum of 2 days each time. After the 3rd or 4th complaint, I finally reported them to the BBB and the Water Authority, and I sent a video to the local news. The next business day, the head of the HOA company called me furious. Despite all the pictures and videos I had sent, she said she was convinced I was making it all up. When I pressed her why she thought that, she specifically said it was because
the park cannot be flooding your house. It's not even part of the same HOA community you live in.
She's probably trying to shift the blame to the other person that manages the other half of the HOA community. But guys, I'm curious, did you ever have to deal with flooding? I remember a couple of years ago, sometimes our basement was flooded after heavy rainfall, but honestly, that's really not that common where I live. Let me know how it is for you. And on to the next story. Was moving to a different city and crashed at my dad's townhouse for a few months to save money for the move. One day, a guy showed up to install a satellite dish that my dad ordered. My dad is not the type of guy to pay very close attention to HOA rules and apparently missed a brand new and highly contentious rule that satellite dishes were eyesores and no longer allowed. So just as the installer guy is getting up to the roof, this couple, head of the HOA, comes sprinting from their townhouse across the street to shut it down, screaming bloody murder. I had absolutely no issue with not getting a satellite dish. It was not even my house, but these two HOA thugs were absolutely awful. The wife was just hurling insults at the installer guy, and I and the husband immediately started climbing the ladder up onto the roof to kick the crap out of the installer guy. None of this was provoked at all, it just went from 0 to 100 miles per hour in no time flat, and this couple was out of control. Well, the installer guy eventually had enough of having racist insults hurled at him and came down the ladder and started a full-on brawl with the husband in my dad's driveway. The wife was screaming at the top of her lungs at me, a stoned couch surfer whose only contribution to this whole fiasco was to answer a door and let a guy on the roof. I still vividly remember being absolutely dumbfounded watching these 2 grown men beat the hell out of each other while I tried to communicate to my dad on the phone over the shrill sounds of some strange woman absolutely berating me for
ruining the neighborhood.
For me, it's absolutely fascinating to see people get so upset over such petty little things. I'm really curious if there's even a single person in our community that would also get upset by a satellite dish on a roof, which is considered a so-called eyesore. I doubt there's even one. And the next one, on the flip side, we live in an absolutely awesome HOA. Our fees are low, $150 per month, and have gone down every year since I have lived here. The board is made of enough of my neighbors who all keep each other in check, and they take their positions on the board very seriously. We have an annual festival at the end of summer with great local food, live music and entertainment all paid for. Our neighborhood is beautifully landscaped year-round, the parks and pools are great, and the whole area is next to the schools, and we have a nice sense of community. We have a magazine that comes out 4 times a year with upcoming events and nice articles. We even have adult time at the pools during summer evenings where you can bring booze and they have live bands, as well as doggy swim days where you can bring your dogs to swim with you. A few months ago, we had a board meeting to discuss our community cable and internet contract with the local cable community. Our HOA fee covers a package deal with mid-tier cable TV, TIVO boxes, 300 Mbit per second internet, bumped up to 1 GB per second for an extra $10 and no service technician fees at no cost to members. We had our lawyer there grilling the cable rep to make sure they honor their commitment to improving the fiber lines in our neighborhood and setting up performance and quality benchmarks, or else we would find another cable company in the future. Our lawyer is kick-ass and earns every dollar we pay him. Our trash and recycling are picked up twice a week by friendly trash crews, and the managers are not going around assessing fines all day because our HOA is properly funded and it is exactly what an HOA is supposed to be, because everyone that lives here takes the HOA stuff seriously. My wife and I lived in multiple areas with evil HOAs and we lucked out with our current place. That's at least a positive example for a good HOA, because I saw some people in the comments mention that it is kind of bizarre that seemingly every single HOA that is talked about on the internet is apparently evil. And by the way guys, one thing I'm also curious about: what internet speed do you have and how much do you have to pay? Here where I live, we pay around 45 euros, which is around, let's say, $50 for 100 Mbit per second download speed. If you ask me, that's super expensive, but let me know in the comments what you pay. Next one, my at the time girlfriend, now wife, rented a townhouse with friends in a community that had an HOA. There was a parking reserved for guests of the tenants. Ironically, parking was always an issue for my wife and her roommates, but always simple for me. I just popped on the visitor's pass and was good to go in that lot. I spent the night probably once or twice a week, and one day I awoke to find my car missing. After some ace detective work, I found out that my 10-year-old, at the time, 5-speed manual transmission Honda had not been stolen but just towed. When I reached out to the HOA, they told me that there was a provision in the bylaws that said a car could only be parked in a visitor's spot for a maximum of 72 hours, and that a board member submitted my car to a list of cars to be towed due to abusing a visitor's pass. They argued the language in the bylaws was such that the total amount of time that a car may be parked in the visitor's lot was 72 hours, non-consecutively, meaning if you park there once a week for 10 hours each week, on the 8th week we are in violation of the policy. This in opposition to the clear purpose of the provision, which is to prevent people from storing their cars in the lot. They summarily denied my request at the next HOA meeting to recover the $150 towing fee. Long story short, I sued them in small claims court and got back the towing fee plus court costs, plus they engaged a lawyer, so I feel good about wasting some of their retainer as well. Tow my car, get sued in small claims court. Not bad, OP. And by the way, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. And by the way, if you're new around here, please don't forget to also subscribe, because I upload daily content and I would love to see you as a new member in our community. And now let's continue. And the next one, my mom's been going through a lot of stupid HOA crap recently. 2.5 years ago, she needed a new storm door and contacted the HOA to get the proper paperwork for the request. 7 attempts and 3 weeks later, after getting 0 reply from the HOA, she decided to just go through with it by contacting the contractor the HOA uses and having them install one of their standard doors. She needed the door changed because the one in place was broken and did not want to risk having to endure them installing it in late fall/winter. This past November, the HOA contacted her saying her door was in violation of their standards and that she was required to change it before January. She contacted a lawyer over it and, long story short, she has to change the door. I told her that the HOA can go F themselves because she tried to do it their way and they never responded. On top of that, who did not notice the door in 2 years' time? It's obvious it's not the same as the doors on the other condos from as far back as you can see her unit. The real story here is that the guy in charge of the HOA is a power-tripping a-hole who enforces the bylaws whenever he feels like it. Complete big fish in a little pond scenario, but he's really a small fish in the smallest pond. pushing around a 65-year-old retiree over a $300 door, which for some reason they told her was nearly $4,000. It is bush league bullcrap. You know, where I come from, we have a saying that is similar to the big fish in a little pond, but instead we say someone on such a power trip likes to take a piss with the big dogs. But I'm not sure if that byword exists in English. And the next one, you see, we had regulations as to what kind of trees you could have. Someone had planted these beautiful cherry blossom trees and lovingly cultivated them from saplings, but got told repeatedly that they were against HOA policy. The homeowner told the president to go F himself. This is not an exaggeration. According to what I heard, the guy literally said,
"Go F yourself,"
and left. The HOA president snuck over to the guy's house and cut down the trees at night. So the homeowner, rather than filing a suit, decided to do the same thing. He went to the HOA president's house and cut down his trees. Again, rather than calling the cops, the HOA president decided to start hacking up his bushes in the middle of the day. We moved before this somehow concluded itself, but man, upper middle class, middle-aged white people are weird. Guys, that reminds me how many of you would like to see r/tree law making a return, because this story would definitely fit the subreddit. And the next one, here is mine. Bought my first place and, a couple weeks in, came to learn our HOA was suspended by the state for failing to file taxes for years. The seller had knowledge of this and never said a word. Right before the sale, the HOA switched management companies, which caused their existing bank account to be closed so funds could be transferred to a new account with the new management. However, given the lack of state recognition, the new management could not open the new account. It was like trying to open a personal bank account without any form of ID. All of our funds were stuck in the form of a check with nowhere to deposit. This meant there was no place for HOA members to send their monthly dues. It also meant there was no account to pay bills from. The board spent months flailing around and holding meetings with no actionable outcomes. The old management company, whose negligence got us here in the first place, refused to respond to any form of contact with us. The new management company agreed to do all the paperwork to resolve the problem, but after I investigated, I found they had not lifted a finger. And the late notices for bills started to roll in, accumulating in a notice posted on our building, giving us a matter of days before the water would be shut off and the building condemned. I had enough of this crap, so I did a ton of research and came up with a plan. This occupied nearly all of my free time at home and on lunch breaks at work. I hired a lawyer to create a trust for us and to accept dues, checks and pay bills with the trust. With cash flowing again, we were able to pay off the utility bills and late fees. I convinced the board to fire the new management. They were not doing a damn thing for us while still sending a monthly bill. They knew we had no way to pay. After an antagonistic call from the CEO of the management company, I drafted the termination letter and the board sent it. I then dug into the state corporate and tax law. I learned how to do a corporate revival. HOAs are technically corporations here. I needed the missing tax records for the state tax board and then to file for reinstatement with the state. The tax board process, by policy, takes 3 months to send a response with their decision, and the state can take up to 3 months after that. We had our lawyer send a legal letter to our unresponsive old management requesting all financial documents. They promptly responded with some of the worst kept records I could have imagined and which looked like they originated from a Word document. But it had just enough information for me to complete the missing years of tax documents. So we sent off the tax documents and began the long wait for the tax board decision to put us in good standing again. In the meantime, I rounded up recommendations for new management companies. The board narrowed it down to 3 and we interviewed them at our annual meeting. After 3 months and no word from the tax board, I began calling them on a daily basis. Most times, nobody had an answer for us as to the status of our request. Eventually, I got enough info to determine that no one there had even looked at our paperwork yet. Luckily, my last call was to the one and only sympathetic soul there, who listened to my story and promised to expedite our paperwork. A week later, we were back in good standing with the tax board. Then I filed the paperwork for the corporate revival. After about a month and a couple phone calls, our HOA was officially recognized by the state again. We hired our new management, they promptly opened an account and transferred the funds from the trust, and things have finally been getting back to some semblance of normalcy. And I was immediately elected HOA treasurer. And the next one, oh, I've got a good one. Our HOA decided to resurface the roads one half at a time. All of the roads in our subdivision are fire lanes, so you typically cannot park on them. People asked in the Facebook group if they could make an exception for this once and let them park in the fire lanes on the other side of the subdivision, because otherwise you would be trapped in your driveway until the asphalt dried. And they refused. They insisted we could just park outside of our gated community. This was not making a lot of people happy, because the neighborhood outside of our gated community is, pretty rough. Finally, they resurfaced the roads and people went ahead and parked outside the gate. The next morning they woke up to almost every car broken into, half of the cars spray painted, general vandalization of cars including keying, dents, etc. One couple brought the HOA to court over this and won. The cherry on top is that one of the HOA members had a pest control truck parked in the fire lane outside of their house for hours not 1 week after this incident. When she was called out on it in the Facebook group, she lashed out at people for
stalking her
and telling everyone where she lived. I'm guessing that this took place in America, but to be honest, I kind of have a hard time believing that neighborhoods like this really exist. I mean neighborhoods where you basically park your car outside of your gated community one time and then it instantly gets vandalized. But then again, I have not exactly been through the rough neighborhoods during my visit to the US, so maybe some of my viewers can shed some light on this story. And the next one, I swear to God my HOA has a camera pointed directly at my house and hired somebody to watch it 24/7. Plumber came in to change my toilet and put the old one on the sidewalk next to his plumbing van while he was working for about 30 minutes. Got a letter from the HOA a week later that said,
"Owner will remove toilet from front yard."
How effing dense do you have to be to not see what was going on there? Oh damn, my toilet garden idea is not allowed? Effing Muppets. Although these omnipresent a-holes have neighborhood watch signs posted all over, nobody was effing watching when my motorcycle was stolen from my driveway the one time I did not pull it up onto my patio. So for my next motorcycle I was sure to pull it onto my patio behind the gate and out of sight every time I rode it. It was only visible from the street for about 15 seconds while I unlocked the gate and came back out to push the bike. Got a letter that said,
"Owner will remove motorcycle from patio."
F you. That's also one thing I'm really curious about. I heard lots of stories of people getting their motorbikes stolen in the US. When I drove a motorcycle in Thailand, we just parked it outside the house with no issues. But from what I've seen on Reddit, people really don't suggest to do that and only park your bike in a garage, in case you live in the US or other Western countries. Either way, getting your bike stolen, that's absolutely heartbreaking. And the next one, oh why yes, I lived through a nightmare HOA and I will never live with another HOA again. First, I bought a pricey condo in a posh area suburb, good schools. This community of condos had many folks on fixed incomes, and it should be said that the community at that time was 100% white and about 65% of the residents were 60 years old or older. There were about 60 units in total. I was 37, married with 2 children. The condo was 3K SF, had 3 massive bedrooms, massive bathrooms, massive kitchen, vaulted ceilings, etc. I bought during a buyer's market and I loved the condo inside. Our condo had the upgraded Florida room, screen patio. I asked for copies of the HOA while we were looking at the condo. I asked 5 more times and had to demand it being shown to me at closing. This was red flag number 1. The condo bylaws were 300 pages of legalese ranging from what kind of car you may park in your driveway to how many guests you may have in your condo to the types of blinds you have to use in your vault windows. The first fine, we had a 25 feet vault in the great room and this weird window that looked like the Death Star. It was high up and I love natural light, so I did not want to put a shade in it. Nope. Fined. A custom shade had to be purchased and installed. It was $450, the shade, the fine was $50. The second fine, the HOA did some landscaping, limited to trees and shrubs and mowing grass areas. We needed to mulch, plant flowers and weed our beds. I left the hose on my enclosed porch. Fined. The third fine, dog poop. We have 2 dogs. Our dogs did not walk at the condo as they went to daycare in the daytime and the dog park in the evenings. We had a small patch of grass about 3 by 4 feet and it was always clean because it was our grass and we are militant about picking up waste. We were fined for someone else letting their dog shit in our yard and not picking it up. I refused to pay this fine and asked the condo to DNA test the waste. At this point, I'm ready to move. The HOA president was this old woman who retired from the post office 600 years ago and spent her life walking the properties and walking up on people's porches with measuring tapes telling them that their fence is out of square or their door is fading and needs painting, etc. She was the nastiest human being alive. The HOA fees were $300 per month and every bit of that money was used to sue people, fine people and administrate the complaint system through a third-party manager. The condo had 0 amenities, save a clubhouse that they used for a euchre game. You had to beg that woman to use the clubhouse and she always said no. The last interaction, one Friday afternoon, I'm standing on my porch looking at my shrubs, which have been cut to nubs, and I'm talking to my neighbor about how horrible it looks and why on earth did the HOA cut all our shrubs, when the old Bitty comes lumbering around the corner. At this exact moment, my sister-in-law, who was about 19, drives up and parks in a guest spot. She was driving a 7-year-old Lancer. The Bitty walks right up to my sister and says,
"Who are you? You cannot park here."
My sister says, "Who are you? I can park here. This is guest parking." I am now walking towards them. The Bitty sticks her finger in my sister's face and tells her that her car is old and dirty. I then step between the 2 women and say, "Whoa, are you out of your effing mind?" I put my house up for sale the next weekend. I received a ton of negative feedback on the shrubs and sent the association invoices to pay me my condo fees back so that I could have my yard properly landscaped. They also kept charging us condo fees but stopped snow removal and banned recycling. That definitely sounds like a wonderful HOA and once again confirms why I would not want to live in a gated community with an HOA. And the last one is gonna be from our own subreddit. The story is titled Heartwarming Story About a Restaurant Customer, posted by user Me That's Me. First let me say, this is a story from long ago. I live in Canada and worked for a department store that is no longer around. This store had a restaurant that served good cheap eats, so was very popular with both seniors and young families. We had many regulars who would come in a couple times a week, so got to know them very well. So on to the story. This nice lady and her husband came in for lunch or dinner a couple times a week. We noticed they had not been in for a while. The husband had been given a cancer diagnosis and was in the hospital for having surgery. His wife came in because he was not eating and thought that maybe if she picked up some food to go, he might eat it. We made his order and told her to tell him from the staff that he needed to eat it so he could get stronger and come back into to eat here. The customer came in every day to pick up a meal for him and it was the only food he would eat. He did get better and came in for a meal. Some of the staff pooled their money and paid for their meal as a welcome back for the couple. The wife was so happy, she returned just before Christmas that year and handed out some Christmas cards to some of the full-time staff. She asked that we did not open them until we got home. Well, inside was a lovely note from her saying that she felt our making of daily meals and words to him to eat saved his life. She also included a $50 bill in the card. She did this each year I was there. This is not a high-end place, it was the kind of cheap eats where staff would get $1 or $2 per table, so that was a huge amount of money. Sometimes you just never know when you change someone's life, and her gift was huge for the staff that were gifted it. Thank you very much for posting that wonderful story, and to everybody else who is still listening, please feel free to post your own stories on r/ripe stories on Reddit. Even though you have to make an account, the email you use does not even have to exist. You can just enter some fake email and start posting right away. Either way, that's the last story for today. I hope you enjoyed the content, and please don't forget to subscribe if you have not already. Around 60% of my viewers currently are not even subscribed to my channel, so please let's try to change that in the future. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I see you again tomorrow.